I did it. I cracked the code. I figured it out. I know how we're going to live forever. Theoretically, it's done, okay? I figured it out, all right? It's going to sound crazy, but trust me, okay? It works. Now, before we begin, I got a great story to tell, okay? Amazing. But first, let's go into a bit of philosophy, okay? Thesis ship. You have a boat, okay? And over time, you take it out over and over, and the boards eventually deteriorate, they rot from the water, so you replace them with new boards, okay? This happens over years, decades, until eventually every board on the boat has been replaced. Now, is it the same boat? That is the thought experiment, that is the idea of how much of an original thing can you replace before it becomes something new? Is it the same ship of Theseus, or is it a different ship? Is it a second ship? Or at what point did it become the second ship? That is the question. There really is no right answer. It's just, what do you think? Where would you draw the line between new ship, old ship? Is there ever a change? Now, I want you to keep that idea in mind as we go into the story, okay? We're going back to 1988. There's a man named Terry Cottle who lives with his wife and 2 daughters in Jasper County, South Carolina. Terry's boss has a daughter named Cheryl Sweat, and her husband is sleeping with Terry's wife. After Terry's marriage and Cheryl's marriage both end, they decide, hey, our spouses were hooking up, why don't we do the same? And the marriage ended up going really well. Terry ended up adopting Cheryl's 2 kids, as well as having a daughter of their own. Terry also supported the family as Cheryl was getting her nursing degree. Terry was a high school dropout and got his equivalency degree, and at 33 became a certified medical technician. The family also moved into a larger home to accommodate Cheryl's mother, who was moving in with the family after Cheryl's father passed away. Terry, however, still had feelings for his ex-wife and continued to talk to her on the phone. After Cheryl's mother moved in, Terry moved in with his sister, feeling that the house was too cramped. Cheryl would often visit Terry's sisters so they could have dinner together, spend the night together, and overall just spent a lot of time at Terry's sister's place rather than the home with all their kids. Eventually, Terry's sister became pregnant and they needed the room for a nursery, so Terry had to move back in with his actual family and was told to make the relationship work. 3 months after Terry moved back in with Cheryl, a huge argument broke out. Cheryl told Terry that she couldn't marry a man who made less money than her, which is horrible since he was the one that was providing for her as she was getting her nursing degree. After the argument, Terry went to the bathroom with a Nerf blaster and unalived himself. And yes, I'm using these terms because apparently YouTube shadow bans you if you say certain words too many times, just like it did with my elephant video, which will be up there in the corner somewhere and probably at the end of this video. Terry was taken to the hospital with a projectile still in his brain, and after 4 days with no signs of recovery, was taken off life support. And also, turns out Terry was a donor, which is very important as we meet our 3rd character in the story. Ramus Graham, who mostly went by the nickname Sonny, was a 57-year-old Air Force veteran and also a manager at a communication center. Now, Sonny was a prominent figure in this community. He would often cook for fundraisers. He was just well known amongst most of the people in his town, and he even had his local high school football team named after him. He was literally him. Bro had it all. Unfortunately, Sonny would eventually contract a disease that would weaken the muscles in his heart, causing him to be unable to stand on his own 2 feet, and required his wife and 2 children to take care of him day by day. Thankfully, however, Sonny had just received a call saying the hospital had a heart that Sonny was waiting for. That heart belonging to Terry Cottle. The transplant was a complete success. However, people started noticing some personality changes within Sonny. Sure, he was a lot more active and energetic, but he also had a new craving for beer and hot dogs, which happened to be Terry's favorite. After being able to enjoy life again thanks to his new heart, Sonny went to write a thank you letter to Terry's family, despite his children telling him that this was a horrible idea. In the letter, Sonny wanted to thank Cheryl in person, so Sonny and his wife Elaine took Cheryl out to dinner, where Sonny immediately fell in love with her. The 2 families became incredibly close as Sonny became somewhat of a father figure to Cheryl, and Sonny's family even attended her 3rd wedding, where Sonny walked her down the aisle, which is really weird for what's about to come up. Cheryl's 3rd marriage would not last very long, and Sonny's wife Elaine eventually figured out that Sonny's relationship to Cheryl was a lot more than just fatherly. After Sonny and Elaine divorced, Sonny moved in with Cheryl. However, things fell apart very quickly and they broke up. Cheryl moved on to husband number 4, which also abruptly ended, and as soon as the divorce was finalized, she married Sonny. Sonny and Cheryl were married for quite some time, and as their 2-year anniversary approached, Sonny wrote out his will. When Sonny gave his will to his nephew, and his nephew asked if everything was okay, Sonny responded, "Everything's fine, but you never know." On the anniversary of Sonny's heart transplant, Sonny unalived himself. In Sonny's will, Sonny left no money to Cheryl. He blew through their retirement fund and drove Cheryl so far into debt that she would never financially recover. All of this to, quote, keep Cheryl in the life she wanted to live. So what's the takeaway of the story? Well, you have a man whose wife says that she'll never love him since he makes less money than her, offs himself, his heart is transplanted into someone else who becomes obsessed with meeting her, immediately falls in love with her, and then puts her into so much debt for the rest of her life. In the end, Terry Cottle got revenge. That is what happened. I don't know what happened to Sonny, but Terry Cottle was in control 100%. And this becomes piece of shit. At what point did Sonny stop being Sonny and Terry Cottle became Sonny? What happened? Or maybe Cheryl is just so awful that every guy she meets unalives himself. I don't know. Either way, crazy story, right? What a crazy coincidence that someone had a heart transplant and immediately began picking up the heart donor's original life, right? Crazy. What a weird coincidence. But what if I said that's not exactly a coincidence? What if I told you that people who receive heart transplants actually began taking on the personality of their donors? And this is where we get into the study. One day, a woman went into a psychiatrist's office saying that she was having vivid memories of being in a car accident that she was never a part of. The psychiatrist did some tests to make sure it wasn't psychosis and actually described her as being completely rational. He asked if the woman had any bodily trauma, to which the woman responded that she had a heart transplant, and digging through some records found out that the donor did in fact became unalived in a car accident. Following this, in the 1990s, a neuropsychologist, Paul Pearsall, studied 10 heart transplant patients to see if they began inhabiting personality traits from their donors. In all 10 cases, 2 to 5 characteristics were shared between the patient's personality change and the donor's personality traits. These included favorite foods, favorite music, opinions about art, interests in their hobbies, and even full career changes. And this really does bring up the question, where is our personality stored? Like, what really makes you you? I talked about this a bit in the Benadryl video, where everything's in our head, you know, the cerebral cortex controls everything about you, and now I don't even know if that's right. How is it that people that get a heart transplant suddenly become almost a different person? And why does that happen? Why does an organ dictate the food you want, or the person that you're interested in, or your hobbies? Why? If everything's neurological in the brain, why would the heart do that? And that's such an interesting question that no one really has an answer to. It is also theorized that our DNA could even be housing those things that make us what we are, our personality, our interests, all stored in our actual DNA rather than just in our head. Perhaps that's why, as the transplant goes through and those DNAs start to mix, that's why those personality traits carry over. That's one leading theory. The other thing I learned is that, sure, our brains have trillions of neurons in them. I mean, mine does. I don't know. Some of you guys are just... And all of our thoughts and ideas are neurons firing in certain patterns and ways. And it turns out that our heart also does contain about 40,000 neurons, which is not as much as our brain, but still quite a lot. Especially for an organ that doesn't really do any thinking. Now, what the likely case is that some of those personality traits are probably stored in the heart neurons for some reason, and then that's what gets transferred into the new body. And I also kind of had this idea, I could be completely wrong with this, however, since our heart does have neurons in it that are capable of holding information, not just DNA, but also through almost a sentient cognitive way, not saying our heart's sentient, but just a way that's thinking, our body does a lot automatically. You know, sure, if you think about breathing manually, or that your tongue is uncomfortable in your mouth, or that you're blinking manually as well, our body does a lot of these functions automatically. What if instead of it being in our head that automates these functions, it's actually in our heart that keeps everything moving on its own? That's why we don't have to tell our organs to do their job. That's why we don't have to constantly think about our stomach releasing digestive acids to break down food, or naturally think about our intestines breaking down nutrients for us. What if that information actually is stored in the heart? Maybe that's why there are neurons in there. I actually cannot think of a reason why we would need to store information in our heart, which I think is just so interesting. We really don't know what's going on in our bodies. When it comes down to it, we have a clue, but we don't have a giant clue when it comes to like the grand scheme of why things are the way they are. And to end such an interesting topic, right? I told you that I found the cure. I told you there's a way we can live forever, okay? Let's say we take your DNA, okay? And we build a replica of you. However, it is just a husk, all right? It is just pure skin and cell tissues, no organs, just blood and skin, okay? And then we take everything inside of you and put it in that husk. Completely hypothetical, all right? There's so many like ins and outs of why this wouldn't work, okay? But completely hypothetical, all right? Complete perfect world. And would you even be the same person? I mean, your insides are all the same, but whole new set of cells, your age is kind of reset technically. Your ideas would be the same, your memories would probably be there as long as your brain gets transferred fast enough, because you can't go that long without oxygen in your brain because you just kind of... But would you be the same person? Or would you just be a clone, a second thesis ship? And I do think there's some truth to the matter to it. What if there is a way to just kind of move yourself along? And after all, in the US, if you're a convict, they don't let you donate organs unless it's to an immediate family member, which, if changing personalities based on what you receive, it's probably good that they don't want serial unalivers possibly being reincarnated in other people. And you know what? If the government believes in reincarnation, so do I. But yeah, that's essentially the video. Let me know what you think about not only Theus' ship and where you think the ship changes if it does at all, but also just what you think about the personality changes, and if at some point Terry Cottle really did just kind of control Sonny for a bit and redirected his life to something that Sonny had no idea about. I think it's interesting. I think it's really cool. If you want to check out the video about elephants, it's a doozy. It's quite a ride. So check it out. And yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.